Hello everyone, Mimikins here. Since the introduction of Safi weapons to Monster Hunter World, it has allowed for some creativity in designing builds. I've always been a fan of Paralysis Status and Exhaust file builds for the Switch Axe, as it gives you lots of opportunities to get some nice DPS in. For the first time, you can now have both at the same time. These builds won't deal the most damage per hit, but they will give you and your group more opportunities to deal damage while the monster is incapacitated. Exhaust files only work in sword mode while the sword is charged. Having power prolonger keeps it charged for longer so you can build up exhaust easier. You're basically depleting the monster's stamina bar, which causes it to move slower, stop to drool, stay in traps for longer and fail certain attacks. Any exhaust damage done to a monster's head causes stun damage, so utilising moves such as Zero Sum Discharge can be extremely potent for applying a lot of stun damage in one go. Since the introduction of the Clutch Claw, this move is even easier to perform. Zero Sum Discharge also gives you level 4 earplugs on your performance, so I've added in an extra earplug to every build so that I'm never interrupted by roars while in the middle of this animation. It's a small investment for a nice quality of life adjustment. On top of this, we're also applying Paralysis Status that will freeze a monster on the spot. Since this is Paralysis Status on the weapon and not the file, this will be applied to all hits of the Switch Axe with the usual 33% chance on Blademaster weapons. This one Switch Axe will let you paralyze, KO and exhaust a monster. First up, I have a full Safi armor build. I've augmented the weapon with 4 element and 1 sharpness for quality of life. Mantle slots are free to use as you wish. The 4-set Safi bonus gives you plus 40 affinity along with 120 status, which has allowed me to add in many skills, boosting exhaust, paralysis and stun. This build has 100% affinity on weak and wounded parts. This is a good all-round build for applying various status ailments to a monster. The only drawback of the Safi set is that every time you attack, including missed attacks, it drains health and prevents the natural recovery of the red health bar. If you do a certain number of attacks on a monster, you will receive a heal. For this reason, I find Health Regen Augment very helpful along with Recovery Up to enhance my healing strength. My second build is utilising True Critical Status. This build is strongest for the Paralysis side of the Switch Axe. It doesn't drain health, which some people may prefer. The Gold Rathian set bonus also has the benefit of Divine Blessing Secret, which reduces incoming damage, making this build more robust for people who prefer having extra defences. However, since you don't have that massive plus 40 affinity, some slots need to be dedicated to Critical Eye, making this build have less room for other utility skills. Some of these can of course be re-added in through the mantles if you choose to do so. This build can use the same weapon as the previous one, as no set bonus is needed on the weapon. You can awaken your weapon with the Gold Rathian set bonus instead of sharpness, which lets you add in a few extra skills on the build by changing up the hands. This build would complete the Stamina Thief bonus along with adding some extra stun resist. However, you are losing a fair chunk of white sharpness and restricting the weapon to only be used with the Gold Rathian set. I also wanted to make some Master's Touch builds. I have a Safi and a Critical Status build. This is my Safi combined with Master's Touch build. You will need to augment your weapon with Teostra Technique to complete the set bonus. This build has some extra utility slots which I've added Recovery Up into. This has 100% affinity on weak and wounded parts. The drawback to this build is the health drain while attacking and no natural recovery while your weapon is out. This build uses Master's Touch and the regular Critical Status obtained from the Ancient Divinity set bonus from the Artian set. To fit in the skills I wanted, I added this skill on my weapon. It's a fairly common skill to come by and far easier than the Teostra Technique from my experience. This one will deal more paralysis status than the previous one. No Recovery Up skill, but it doesn't have that health drain from attacking. It also has 5% less crit rate, sitting at 95% affinity on weak and wounded spots, which is still very high. These builds are a lot of fun. While they don't deal the most damage per hit, they do provide a way to create openings for everyone to go full throttle DPS onto a monster. They also slow things down a little, so if you're having a hard time hitting a monster because they're moving around too fast, these can really help. Thanks for watching. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.